when I was pregnant, I thought I wanted to breastfeed, but I wasn't quite sure, and I didn't really know how I'd go about it when it started. And my GP and the courses that I attended in the Rotunda gave me great advice on what to do and helped make that decision to try to breastfeed. The biggest thing that I took away at that time was that breastfeeding is a skill that you learn. It's very natural, but it's not something that comes to everyone naturally, and it takes a while to establish. And you know, if you're undecided about breastfeeding, the best thing you can do is educate yourself in advance. There's loads of resources out there through your maternity hospital or La Leche League or Quidju, and really learning about latch and positioning before you have your baby, and then afterwards reaching out to all of the support services that are there and asking questions and asking for people to come and look at the baby's latch in the early days. All of those things can help you troubleshoot the issues that sometimes make breastfeeding complicated at the start. Once you've weathered those early days and established breastfeeding, then it becomes just the most special thing that you can have and share with your baby. It's been a really beautiful experience for me. Exhausting and demanding, but unlike anything else that I've been able to do with my baby.
So yeah, I would have loved to know before I started to breastfeed that your milk only comes in on day 3 or 4, and also that the latch was going to be a little bit challenging for the baby. I wasn't surrounded by many people that breastfed, like friends or family, so I didn't have a lot of people to ask for any advice. So I was kind of just figuring this all out for myself, which was a little bit challenging, but without the help from the midwife on the ward when I was leaving, she was just so helpful, and she really made it happen for me, because without that bit of like help and advice from a professional, I definitely wouldn't have kept it going.
My baby was born prematurely at 34 weeks via emergency C-section. It was very much a surprise arrival. I had very little prepared in terms of what my feeding plans were going to be. My original intention was to breastfeed, but I hadn't really done any of the reading or kind of background research that I realised very quickly I needed. Once the baby arrived, I realised kind of how urgent it would be to be able to provide colostrum for him, as it would be the best thing for him in order to develop and to grow. Unfortunately, we were separated immediately after birth, and he was taken to the intensive care unit, and I was brought back to the ward, where I was quickly trying to get my head around how I would go about expressing colostrum, especially when being separated from the baby. The lactation consultant at the Rotunda was invaluable in helping me learn how to actually do this and giving me some tips and tricks, and also with the support that I needed. It was a very emotionally difficult time being separated from a baby, and I was completely overwhelmed and in a lot of pain and unsure of if I was actually going to be able to do this. But the constant reassurance from the lactation consultant here really helped, and would really recommend availing of that service.
To think that breast milk comes straight from your body and is designed uniquely for your baby and their needs, it's kind of miraculous really when you think about it.
Hello, my name is Sinead and I'm one of the midwives here in the Rotunda Hospital. I'm going to talk you through what happens when you arrive to the postnatal ward after giving birth to your baby. When you arrive to the ward, you will be welcomed and orientated by one of our midwives. They will explain our emergency bell system and inform you of how it is operated. You will be given a jug of water and encouraged to stay hydrated. This is also very important to help prevent constipation over the next few days. You will be asked to pass urine into a jug. If you have a urinary catheter in situ, our midwife will advise you on what you need to do here. We encourage early mobilisation as much as possible to help prevent blood clots. The midwife will perform a postnatal check on both you and your baby. This will happen every 12 hours until discharge. The postnatal period is both a rewarding and very challenging time. The midwife is here to help, support and advise you as you adapt to parenthood. Your body will change over the next couple of days. It is normal to bleed for the first 2 to 3 weeks as the womb sheds its lining. If you are still bleeding heavily after this time or passing large clots, please inform your public health nurse or your GP. You may experience what is known as afterbirth pains for the first few days after the delivery. These are mild contractions as your womb shrinks back to its pre-pregnancy size. If you have had an episiotomy or a vaginal tear, it is important to change your pads regularly every 2 to 3 hours to ensure they are clean. We also advise you to clean the area with some warm water and cotton balls after passing urine. If you have had a cesarean section, your wound will be assessed daily and your dressing will be removed on day 3 by one of the midwives. If you have had stitches, they will dissolve themselves. If there are clips to skin, they will be removed by your public health nurse or your midwife on day 5. During the first few days, your breasts will change whether or not you are breastfeeding. It is important to wear a well-supportive and fitting bra. Your milk normally comes in between day 3 and day 5. If you are not breastfeeding, it is important to avoid touching and stimulating your breasts as it may become very uncomfortable. You may experience some swelling to your hands and your feet as the excess fluid is present. This usually goes away within a couple of days. Rest as much as you can and elevate your feet while sitting or lying to relieve some of the pressure from that fluid. Having a baby can be an emotional and overwhelming time. You may experience what is known as the baby blues on day 3, 4 or 5. This is completely normal and your midwife is here to support and reassure you. If you find that these blues are lasting more than 2 weeks, please let your public health nurse or GP know, as you may be at risk of suffering from postnatal depression. Almost 1 in 5 women suffer from this, so it is nothing to be ashamed of. All of our staff here in the Rotunda Hospital are very happy to help and support you as you transition into parenthood.
this will be an example of how to bath your baby before you leave the Rotunda Hospital today. So first of all, we want to make sure that the room is of nice temperature, usually 16 to 18 degrees. And we want to make sure that everything is at a nice height, especially after a postnatal elective section or emergency section. You want to make sure you're not bending down too much. So you want to make sure things are very much at hand and that you never leave the baby unattended before you start your bath. But we always say to put the cold water in first and then the hot. And this is because some baths can actually absorb the heat if you put the heat in first. So it's better to put the cold in first and then add the heat to the correct temperature. So ideally we're looking to get a temperature of about 36 or body temperature. That's usually nice and warm for the babies. We are often at fault of making it too cold, and that's when the babies cry. We're filling the bath to a decent depth. Again, never leaving the baby unattended. We want the baby's belly button to at least touch the water. We want you to check with this part of your arm, sometimes with your elbow, but this part is more sensitive and you'll be able to feel the water of a better temperature. The water temperature usually around 36 to 37 degrees or body temperature, nice and hot so that the baby doesn't feel the cold. So again, we want it to be quick in, quick out. Babies don't like the temperature being cold and they don't regulate their temperature very well. So for the first part of the bath, we want to make sure that the body is wrapped up and that we're just exposing their head. So again, we're trying to minimize their exposure to the cold. So we're undressing baby. And we've nice warm towels, especially in the winter. So we're wrapping baby up. Babies are not dirty, so again, 2 to 3 times a week is sufficient. And we usually wait until their cord falls off for them to have their first bath when they go home. So again, we want to make sure that they're supported nice and safely. I have my hand like a C around the back of her ears, and that's making sure that we're holding her head with core control, that she's nice and controlled. So again, we're going to pop her under my arm like a rugby ball, similar to that if you were breastfeeding. So under my arm so that she's nice and firm. Okay, and you have one hand free. So again, we might get a little bit of a cry out of her, but we're going to clean the eyes first of all. So going from the inside out. So just water at this stage, no products. So eyes inside out and discard. And then the other one, inside out and discard. And finally just around her mouth where there's probably lots of milk. And her lovely hair. So at this point, no shampoos or anything. Then we're bringing her back to our station, ensuring that the head is dried adequately. And quickly then we prepare to do the body. So we place the nappy off to one side, and then you prepare to hold her safely. So I'm going to place her head in the crooks of my wrist by lifting the baby and placing her head in the crooks, while firmly holding on to under her elbow. Then with your other hand, you're going to grab under her thigh. And then lift and into the bath, submerging till about the belly button. And then remove this hand and work at washing the baby. Taking pieces of cotton wool, concentrating on under the pits. From the vagina down, or in the case of males, it's not too important. And then around the belly button. And that's it. And again, you're taking your hand and your firm grip on her thigh, holding underneath her arm as well. Baby's head is in the crooks of your wrist, and you're lifting back onto the surface and rocking baby, ensuring there's no heat lost. So again, it's important to make sure that you get into all their little folds and creases. You can imagine getting out of the shower yourself and not being dried correctly. Again, dressing them as quickly as possible and ensuring that they don't lose too much heat. And then a nice feed is often good afterwards to settle them back down.